Continuing with the topic symbolism, we're going to look at metaphors and the prophets. Metaphors is really a part of symbolism, uh, as is parables are also symbolism. But we're going to focus on uh, the prophets. Actually, we're going to focus on one prophet tonight because trying to trying to explain the metaphors uh, and the symbolism um, takes so much time that we're only gonna look at a passage from Isaiah tonight, and you'll see why it's taking a little more time so that we're not looking at any more prophets. Okay. Now, just for starters, okay, symbolism is the use of objects or words to express ideas or qualities. Okay. And just a simple definition of metaphors, it's a figure of speech containing an implied comparison in which a word or phrase that literally means one thing is applied to another. Easterners use metaphors extensively in their everyday speech. Metaphoric usage is not limited to Eastern languages alone. Nonetheless, an Easterner's employment of metaphors is greater than that of Westerners. We do use metaphors, but it's 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 just a style of speech and a style of writing when you Near Eastern um, writers use. And so now, so when we're talking about the prophets, and we really I didn't put it up here, but I really need to put um, mysticism here because mysticism is visions and dreams. Okay, now the prophets communicated with God through visions and dreams. And in those dreams are the symbols. That's where the symbols come in. And basically, the prophets, the other thing that the prophets, one of the main other things that the prophets did is they anointed and advised the kings. So the prophets received their communication from God, and then they would advise the kings, and or they would tell the people also. But that's the idea. So you have to remember we got a passage from Isaiah tonight, and Isaiah is one of the major prophets in the Bible. Okay, and the book of Isaiah, which is pronounced Isaiah in Aramaic, is quoted more than any other prophetic book in Jewish literature. And that goes for that's Judaism, Christianity. It's still one of the main prophet book. And this prophet came from a different background than the other prophets and stands out as the greatest prophet and statesman in the history of Israel and Judah. Isaiah was respected by kings and princes. He was well educated and versed in foreign policy and the internal affairs of his own people. His concerns and oracles were messianic deliverance, the centrality of Jerusalem, and economic and social justice. So we're going to see a combination of those in the passage that we're going to look at tonight. But mainly we're interested in the symbolism and the metaphors, because if you don't understand what these metaphors mean, then you don't understand what the passage is saying. And then another lesson to be learned here tonight is that you cannot take the Bible literally all the time. There are, and especially with the prophets, you can't take it literally, or you will have a misinterpretation or a misunderstanding. All right, so the first few verses.
And there shall come forth a shoot out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And he shall be at peace, and the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the reverence of the Lord, and shall shine forth in reverence of the Lord, and he shall not judge after that which his eyes see, neither reprove after which his ears hear. But with justice shall he judge the poor, and reprove with uprightness for the meek of the earth, and he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. Righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his waist.
Okay, so before we start defining the metaphors and whatnot, you probably could have guessed, but if you did not, this is the prophecy about Jesus coming from Isaiah. Okay, so you can keep that in mind as we go through here, and you can already see some resemblances of Jesus and what he taught. And I just wanted to mention, you see the yellow highlighted word reverence. This is one of these situations again where traditionally and in the King James Bibles and other traditional Bibles, here it will talk about the fear of the Lord, not the reverence. And the same way here, shall shine forth in the reverence of the Lord, not the fear of the Lord. Okay, that's a major translation difference. And of course, it changes the meaning too. All right, so now we're going to break these 5 verses down so that we might know what we're talking about. Okay, now I just said that we're technically talking about Jesus, but a shoot out of the stem of Jesse. Okay, a rod or shoot in this instance means an heir, that is, a spiritual heir to rule over the true and messianic kingdom, the religion of Israel. Okay, so we're talking about an heir here. We're talking about an heir of Jesse. All right, David is referred to as symbolizing power and strength of character and true obedience to God. King David was obedient to God. He blundered many times, but he always repented. Okay, one thing that's not in my notes here is Jesse, okay, was King David's father. And if you go and check the lineage that appears in Matthew, the first chapter, you'll see where it's Jesse begat David. And remember that the Davidic line was very, very significant. So a stem, a shoot out of the stem of Jesse. Okay. And this this shoot, or as we know him as Jesus. Okay, the rod of his mouth. The rod of his mouth is a Semitic idiom that means he will smite the land with his words. Okay, the rod is generally used to lead the sheep and the lambs and is therefore symbolic of discipline and correction. It is often said his words are as sharp as a sword. The Messiah was to smite the earth with his words, not a battle, not a sword, not a shooting. That is, he would condemn all evil practices, injustices, greed, and oppression. Again, keep Jesus in mind here. All right. Okay. And we have the line that the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. Now, we think when we see these things and we think slay and we think blood and guts and all of that, but no, that he's not pointing to that. Okay. The breath of his lips symbolizes a wind at times kills people in their sleep. There was a kind of poisonous wind in the Near East that often kills people. So, the other thing you got to remember about these symbols and whatnot, remember the Bible was written. The Bible wasn't written to, and it wasn't written for us. Okay. It was written to and for the ancient Near Eastern people. Now, they had no trouble whatsoever understanding when it says the breast of his lips shall he slay the wicked, because it because it was something that they experienced every day. They were familiar with it, and so they understood it. Um, so this entire verse reveals that the Messiah would condemn and reprove the wicked of the world for their evil acts and destroy the evil by means of meekness, nonviolence, his teaching, and not by force. Force. So you see, even though we're back in the Old Testament, everybody thinks, well, it's God was angry, and and there's blood and warfare and all of that. But no, that's not what he's saying, and that, of course, that's not the way Jesus was either. Okay, now, so then they talk about the girdle of his loins. Okay, so the girdle of his loins is righteousness. The girdle of his waist is faithfulness. And where do they get that? Okay, the girdle symbolizes strength, readiness, and alertness. And um, during times of fear, men wear their girdles day and night. Girdles are worn to hold the looser garments together. Then again, men with girdles walk faster and are ready to defend themselves when in danger. So, girdles are a kind of sash or wide belt, are made of woven materials in diverse colors. Some are made of leather. A container inside the girdle is used as a purse for money and other valuable articles. And the prophets used girdles of leather. Girdles were worn by travelers so they could carry bread and other provisions between their garments. Swords and daggers are also fastened between the girdle and the upper garment. And so, okay, so let's keep in mind men and women in the ancient Near East wore several layers of clothing. Okay. Um, this doesn't necessarily show a lot of layers, but it does show what they're talking about is the girdle. Okay. And basically it's a sash that was tied around their waist, because you can imagine if you have two or three garments on, that you would want to have them fastened. And uh, and remember, their garments, they didn't travel by, most of them didn't even travel by horses or or donkeys. They walked, so they had to take their food, they had to take stuff with them, and so it was carried inside the garments or inside the sash. So I hope that makes a little more sense. Mainly, that's what they used when they were talking to when he relayed this to the people. They knew exactly what he was talking about. Okay, so this verse refers to the Messiah, who was to be girded not with leather and linen girdles, but with righteousness and faithfulness. His strength was to be spiritual strength. His armor was to be meekness and the spirit of the Lord and the spirit of wisdom and understanding. So hopefully this makes sense that a metaphor is, it says one thing, but it actually means another. Okay, so that's the first 5 verses, and it gets better.
The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid and the calf, and the young lion and the ox shall feed together, and a little child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed together, and their young ones shall grow up together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. And the suckling child shall play with the serpent, and the weaned child shall put his hand into the hole of the asp. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And on that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand as an ensign to the peoples. To him shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, so let's go here. No, it's easy if you especially if you experience things visually. It's easy to think of a wolf lying down with the lamb, but then saying, "Well, wait a minute, that's just not natural." Well, no, it's not. But this is a metaphor. So the wolf, the leopard, and the young lion are symbolic of wicked oppressors, the big guys, Assyria, Egypt, Elam, and Ethiopia. The lamb, the kid, and the calf represent the pious and innocent people of smaller nations, such as Judah, Israel, and Edom, which were often overrun by the great powers. So, so you can see here, this is a metaphor. This will be a time of peace uh, when the the wolves, the wicked oppressors, will settle down and they won't bother the lambs anymore. And there will be peace. Okay, so and then we have, and the calf and the young lion and the ox shall feed together. So once again, okay, this is symbolic of a reign of righteousness and equality under which oppression and injustices would cease, and justice and harmony would reign. And that is the Assyrians and the Egyptians, who are portrayed as wild animals, would be tamed and would live with the Israelites and other weak nations without harming them. So keep in mind, this is a prophecy. And this is a prophecy from 800 BC. So many, many, many centuries ago. Um, but keep that in mind. Okay. And then it said, a little child shall lead them. Well, you want to picture a 5-year old on the throne, but that is not what it means. Okay. It just means that there will be a simple leader, a simple counselor, or an uneducated advisor, or probably we would say a non-political advisor. So the Messiah would establish the reign of justice, peace, and brotherly love that ultimately would end the reign of tyranny and injustices and hasten the kingdom of God. The world then would have no use for human wisdom and wise counselors who see only one side of the truth, and the diplomats who usually have two yardsticks of justice. An uneducated man, simple and honest like a child, will give counsel both to the great and the small nations. Every nation will be satisfied with what it has. Then wars will cease and the reign of God will begin. So now let's look at this. The lion shall eat straw like the ox is an idiom, and it means, once again, powerful nations who invaded and devoured smaller nations would be satisfied with what they have. The lion symbolizes a great power. Many great nations have used it as their emblem and as a symbol of strength. An ox or a cow, on the other hand, is a weaker animal when compared with the lion. It does not prey on other animals and is satisfied with grass. So these statements must not be understood literally. The lion will always eat meat, of course, but the lion depicted here is a nation that devours and lives on the spoils taken from smaller nations. Isaiah sees the day when powerful nations that devour will be satisfied with their own common wealth and that which God has provided. The time will come when the great nations will use their strength and knowledge for the good of all humankind. Then prosperity will be so abundant that there will no longer be any need for plundering weak and defenseless nations. Pretty good prophecy, I'd say. And lastly, we have the suckling child. So play with the serpent, the weaned child. So put his hand in the hole of the asp. You see asp and cockatrice is what is the word in the King James, but in this instance are symbolic of deadly enemies. In the new era, these men would become so meek and harmless that even simple men could mix with them and deal with them. The terms suckling child and weaned child mean innocent men and women, suggesting that they can handle the wise and wicked men who before this time had been like asps and cockatrices. Um, so we have a prophecy here that's, in my mind, pretty outstanding. Remember that the prophecy is about Jesus. The stem of Jesse is Jesus. Okay, and and also it is what Jesus taught. It actually, I mean, this wasn't a prophecy for Jesus. It was the fulfillment of the kingdom and whatnot, and should have been the fulfillment of this. But well, I don't know, and that's what I put out here for you guys tonight. Um, thank you so much for your contributions. And again, we're on Facebook and YouTube. Yeah, so the
Thanks, Penny.
prophecy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just said thank you, Penny. Very
Oh,
interesting.
okay. Isaiah's prophecy about Jesus. I mean, okay, technically, according to the Bible, that has been fulfilled. Um, Jesus came, and those what we just read about, and you know, and he taught justice and peace and harmony and all of that. And so technically that's been fulfilled. But when we read the other parts about it, about the wolf flying down with the lamb and there'd be peace among nations, um, that prophecy just may not have been fulfilled, but I'll leave it up to you um, to decide. Just one more thing. It still doesn't matter what I read in the Old Testament. It just rings true to me. Now, parts of it, maybe not all of it. So